Besides looking at the soldiers, you said something earlier about the town Goza. Why no? Why it looks as if nobody's paying attention to the location or what's around Goza. Goza is the mountain regions are close to the border with Cameroon. We're supposed to have a relationship with Cameroon. Do you think that should be exploited?
Yes, I tell you, when it comes to border towns, okay, when it comes to border towns, you discover that there are a lot of international involvement. We're looking at two countries, and each one has a marked limit. Goza is on our side. Whatever Cameroon can do for us will never exceed their side of that international boundary.
Even if they're invited to cross over?
Crossover, well, I tell you something about crossover, short of joint military operations, which I don't know much about. But you don't have men, soldiers, troops of the other country, properly dressed and armed, crossing borders. I tell you why. As we sit, there's a certain distance from our border. If you exceed with your soldiers, we will just take it as an act of war. There are 3 lines. I won't go into the names of those lines right now.
But Captain Umar, looking at some of those, the clips, the most recent one, which is the one we've shown for some time now, I mean, do we take for granted? Because ordinarily you'll have people think, looking at those images, there's so many things you could analyze from there. And then looking at the military capacity, you'll expect that we should have the capacity to analyze the environment. Because, I mean, yeah, some of our men have been there. You know what the area looks like. You see vehicles there. We have people who have said, look, all those Hilux vehicles that we see being paraded, somebody's supplying them. So if you trace some of those unique numbers for those vehicles, where do they come from, or those plate numbers, and then even the military equipment you see there, looking at some of those, would it be out of place to analyze based on what we see there, if they take them to the military lab and study some of those?
Yes, it will not be out of place, but then do we have the capacity to do those? Let me put it simply to you. It's, as I said, starts from us. We have to think. And if you look at the average, the average soldier, if you look at his ambience, he has what it takes. He's a graduate. He's educated. He goes right out there that is out of Nigeria. He performs and gets, very wonderful ratings. And he comes back, and the same soldier cannot do what he has been able to do out there among other international pairs here at home. What does it tell you? It tells you that he has what it takes. The body is willing, but the tools are not there. I tell you, pick Nigerian soldiers any day and take them out there, both academically, militarily, they excel. So why do they come home and fail to excel? The same reason why they have refused to march. The enabling equipments are not there. That's just it. It's not only about the military, it's everywhere. If you picked, for example, with all due respect, the road safety, and you lend them to another country to help them establish another road safety there, they're going to put something wonderful on ground, and probably 20 years down the line, we'll be learning from those ones, like the issue of Malaysia and palm kernel seeds. The problem is we are not thinking. The world is driven by thinkers, and we need to think. Military presence is not just physically, you don't have a human presence of physically fit young men and think you have an army. You must have a think tank behind there that drives what they achieve. Okay? And that is why we need to dump the stereotypes. We need to come out of that box.
I mean, I thought we had, just as an aside, but also related, a national think tank. I only saw them once or twice in the dailies, and nothing.
If we did have a national think tank, can we say the military part of that national think tank, the gross output of their thoughts is what we are seeing in the last 2 years of the state of emergency? Can we use that to grade the think tank? Yes. So that's why I say what we hear officially doesn't align with what we see on ground.
But if they've been able to identify the fact that they need to be more equipped than they are or than they were, how long does it normally take? I mean, should they tell us when they've supplied these equipments? We know that those requisitions or proposals went to the National Assembly, and then they identified that, yes, 1 billion. So are we supposed to be told when, yes, these equipments have arrived, or
No.
we should just see some action going on?
Yes, indeed. You shouldn't be told, really, but there has to be a process, and the process has to be benchmarked. What do I mean by benchmarked? We don't just hear 1 trillion has been spent, and that's it. That's a bit, spurious. You have to benchmark it. What is the 1 trillion for? There has to be a business case. You have to justify it. And having justified it, it is approved. Somebody will have to take ownership of that 1 million. Taking ownership of that 1 million means there are results which you must actually return, because this 1 million is meant to meet XYZ results. So if 1 trillion in the past has been spent, what was it used for? Who took ownership of it? Okay, there has to be feedback and there has to be follow-up. Both will meet in the middle.
Also, because at the time that proposal went to the National Assembly, you had a lot of people who spoke up saying, no, what is this for? Where's the breakdown? Will it also work if maybe the military says, okay, if that will cause controversy, then you, maybe whichever authority, either the federal government or whoever, these are the equipments we need. Go procure them for us.
The equipments you need themselves have to be informed by a lot of, okay? I don't know what they do about weapons procurement in the defense ministry, but I think the equipments you need should be informed by those who are at the point there, not those who are at the top. You should be seeing a situation where a private soldier picks an FNSLR and you give him enough ammunition and say, just keep shooting this thing until it packs up. Let's see what the resilient levels are. An FNSLR is actually a very resilient weapon, but it's outdated. Fabrique Nationale, it's of Belgian origin. I'm just using it as an example. Or an AK-47. You get feedback from him. This is what it does, this is what it cannot do. That feedback is what is now, escalated. To say, okay, what are the predominant weapon types of the threat or the adversary? And if he has that kind, what are the characteristics of that weapon? Okay, what are the capabilities of that weapon? What is the firepower, the range, and what have you? And how can we get one that will better that one? Then you go shopping. But basically, we've seen weapons procured and brought, and the soldiers tell you, look, this thing can't do the job. Vehicles have been procured while I was in service that were virtually soft skin.
So who does the procurement?
That's it. The process has to address it and append an ownership.
Or could that have also been deliberate?
Of course, people will definitely exploit loopholes to make their profits. But if you went to corporate organizations, for example, and you went into a procurement department, even when they buy your product, they're probably not going to pay you until they've used it for 6 months.
If I may come in here, when you were in service, did the military procure its own equipment?
There were procurement of equipments from time to time.
By the military themselves?
No, it couldn't have
Ministry
been
of
the
Defense?
military directly. It has to come through the Ministry of Defense. The army cannot just go directly to the market and do its own procurement. I don't know what the policies and the processes are now, but whatever they have to be, the policies have to be informed by demand, and other than that, the funds have to be owned by someone. When you have ownership of a fund, you have to come back and give us an account of.
Who? When you say ownership, you say it's done by you. Okay, let's use your time when you were in the.
Let me give you an example of what I mean. If you were the chief and you've gone forward to defend 20 naira, there was a reason why you wanted 20 naira. We will expect that reason to be met. Where you don't meet it, then we'll look for another chief.
But the chief is not the one that's going to buy this
Hold
equipment.
on.
Somebody else is going to buy the equipment that he defended.
No, hold on. That equipment has been specified. Whoever likes to buy it, it must come to specification. And it is up to him to put it through the paces, down to the pointsman, and then accept it. It's not magic, it's common sense. If we were to buy a soap, which we want to use, and we know that we're looking for a soap that is going to lighten our skin up, and we've been able to identify the soap, it doesn't matter who buys it. It ends on my table, and I give the approval. And before I give the approval, we'll have to test run it. 1, 2, 3 people are going to use that soap. And within a period of time, if they've not started becoming lighter, then sorry.
Mm.